welcome you to today's Rossum webinar. My name is Philip, and I'm the product manager at Rossum. And today we wanted to present a new feature which we call serverless functions, and hopefully this will be helpful to you, and you'll get some nice takeaways which you can try on later in your trials. In case you don't see anything, I hope you do, because I'm just sharing my screen, and I think we can start. In case there are any issues, then just send it to the chat, and it seems like everyone is fine, so let's go. So first of all, I wanted to take you through the agenda, which I'll be presenting today, and then we can start going through all the slides. So first of all, we'll talk about what generally is Rossum. It will be very, very brief introduction, and it's just in case some new people who haven't seen Rossum or tried Rossum yet will get a brief introduction. Then I'll talk about reasons why you could be extending Rossum, and based on that, I'll follow up with how serverless functions could help. And afterwards, I'll just briefly go through the benefits and challenges of the serverless functions, and then I'll go into the Rossum app, and I'll show you what it's all about. And afterwards, I'll try to explain what we're thinking about in the future. And moreover, I wanted to tell you some news about what we did with extensions, because I saw that some of our existing customers are joining the conference. So I just wanted to explain what we did and what might help users which are already extending Rossum now. And at the end, we'll have a question and answers session. So what Rossum is, it's a platform where you can send data. Those are usually images or PDF documents, which you can either scan or email them to Rossum, use an RPA process, or just send them over an API. And once we get the documents, we run them through our AI engine. We capture information from the documents, and once having the data captured, you can see them in our pretty neat UI, where you can check all the values. You can quite efficiently get the data which were missed by the AI engine, and then you can send the data to some external systems through extensions, and usually the target systems are ERP systems, accounts payable systems, or Excel sheet, or it's some other RPA process which has its own workflow configured. Just one thing to mention is the UI. It's not just for making the people even more efficient, but it even lets the AI learn once we start the training on the data. So it's a feedback loop, human versus machine. Okay, so that's what Rossum is about. And now the reasons why you could be extending Rossum, there are multiple of them, of the reasons, and I've divided them into three categories. One is when you would like to adjust the workflow. So maybe when you send documents to Rossum and you wait until the data is captured by the AI engine, then you might want to get the data in your system, do some checks on that side, and then sync it with Rossum. So you might want to be notified when the status of the document changes, or another use case could be when you're moving a document to a different folder based on the captured data. So you could have different users assigned to folders, which in Rossum that's called a queue. And based on the initial data capture, you might be wanting to move the data to different folders. So that might be another interesting use case which you might need in Rossum. The second category would be creating business rules. So our experience is that for different organizations, we see different needs. So they might have different business logic when they're calculating some values, or when the users are reviewing the data. So like one use case would be that you might want to show your own custom error or warning message to the user when they're capturing data from the documents. Another use case could be that you have your own formulas or equations which are used for calculating the missing values. So if, for example, if you're calculating a missing value added rate, and last use case would be when you're thinking about automating the documents. So that means that you don't want the user to touch the document at all, because we've captured most of the values. But in order to make the automation with a low error rate, you might want to do some checks, data checks on the document. I'd call them data integrity checks. And once that is passed, so that could be something like that you're comparing the total amount on the document to the sum of the line items. And based on that, you would like to mark the fields as validated automatically by the machine. So that's what you could also do from the extensions. And the last category, which is, let's say, the final step, is when you're sending the data to the external system. So when the user is pressing the confirm button, or in some other moments, you would like to take the data and send them to the external system where you store them, and it's passed to the ERP, and later it can be passed to payments. So those are generally the use cases you might want to happen in Rossum. And in order to meet the needs, we've come up with something which is called serverless functions. And how it basically works is that you can implement your own function in a code, and you can easily plug it into your workflow. And what then happens is whenever some of the events and actions happen in Rossum, which you've configured, then based on those events, the data from Rossum is sent to the serverless functions, which takes the code and it takes the input data from the document, and then based on the data, it performs the behavior which you've implemented, and that's basically it. So well, you're probably thinking what the benefits could be in your case, and we've looked at several benefits, and one is that you would have zero maintenance cost, because otherwise you would be having your own HTTP server where every time something happens in Rossum, it's sent to your infrastructure, or it could be on Amazon Web Services. There you would take the data sent in the notification, and you would send it back, or you would start your own workflow, but it's all managed through an HTTP server. And with serverless functions, it can be all executed on the Rossum side. The second part is that it's quick to deploy. So again, with your own HTTP server, you would have to program everything, you would have to maintain it, and also it would take a little bit longer to deploy. Whereas with serverless functions, once you enter Rossum for the first time, you can in a minute deploy a custom code which can adjust the Rossum behavior, and it's very quick. And the last part is that we've come up with an easy to extend initial template, which is just a sample function which you can extend, and of course we'll be extending the template functions more and more. So we'll try to meet all the necessary use cases. What could be the challenges when you would be using the serverless functions? There are a few of them. And first of all is that currently the serverless function doesn't maintain a database. So, and like, why would you be needing a database? So usually if a user, let's say, is reviewing the data on the document and they capture the vendor name, then usually want to get the name of the vendor compared to the vendor name in your database, and for that you need the values. And once you match the vendor names, you would like to send the ID of the vendor to the target system. So that's usually done on an how we see the implementations are usually done is that you have an HTTP server where you basically mirror the database from your ERP, you do some matching, and then you quickly return the value back. And why you're mirroring the database is because you want the lookups in the HTTP server to be quick. And with serverless functions, you currently don't have this opportunity to keep something in the memory. So that's one limitation where the like HTTP server, what we currently call a webhook, is probably more useful. And so if you're having a more complex implementation, then serverless functions might not be the right choice for you. And the second challenge right now is that in the trial, it has a limited internet access, so they cannot access some external API, but that's a thing that can be configured. We just wanted to explore the use cases which you'd be using, so we've limited the internet access. And the last one is that currently only one runtime is being used, and that's Node.js 12, so it's a JavaScript. And now I would like to take you through our trial just to show you how it looks. I'll go to the trial, and you can see that I'm right now in the Rossum trial. So I'll show you where to create the serverless function and what it can do with all the information which I've described already, but this is just seeing it in practice. So in Rossum, if you would go to the settings screen, you would see a tab which is called extensions. And if you click on the extensions, then you can choose from two objects which can be created. One is webhook and one is function. And as I already described, function is something that runs on the Rossum infrastructure, and webhook would be basically a notification that is sent to a URL which represents your own web server if you would implement one. So I'll go ahead and I create a function. I'll call it my test function. And what is important now that you should select an event, an action that when the function would be triggered and with what data. So if I open the dropdown, I can see that there are two types of events. One is document status, and the second one is document content. And if I should briefly distinguish those, then the document status is that whenever a document changes from, let's say, status importing to a status to review, then you get a notification, whereas the document content is the notification is sent when either the values are being initialized by the Rossum AI engine, or another action would be when user updates something on the validation screen. So let's say I update the invoice ID, then I would get notified. And the last one is export action, and that happens when user clicks on the confirm button. And in a more technical manner, that means when the document is switching from well to state exporting. So for the purpose of this demo, I'll just select those two actions. So when the document is being initialized and when user updates the value, and I'll create the function. And as you can see, I was taken to a function editor, and I already see some template of the function, and I see some testing environment. So just to quickly take you through what the function does, it first of all has a function called Rossum hook request handler, which is a necessary function which starts the function, and it's being sent an annotation object and its content. And based on that content, we've defined two behaviors which the function will perform. And one is that it takes all the amount-based column data points. So if you are capturing line items, then we get all the data points based on this ID, and we have a look whether the value is too big or not. And based on that, we show some user message. And the other one is that we find the invoice ID and we get its value, and then we replace dash if it is present in the text. And once we have all those two operations done, then we return the messages and the operations which will be done on the document data, and it will be returned, let's say, to Rossum, and it will be processed. So what you could expect is that if you implement this function and you put it on a queue, it will perform those two things whenever user updates the values or whenever the values are being initialized for the first time. And in order to make the development much easier, we've created this testing framework where we've added some sample configuration of the document, and you can take this input and you can run it through the function, and you would see that your function which you've implemented based on the data, it would return these values. So let me just quickly here find the invoice ID, so I can see that there's some invoice ID here, and the value is shown here. So if I would put there a dash into the value and I would run it, then you can see that the value here is cleaned and it doesn't have any dash. And so now I tested that it works, and now I would like to assign the function to a queue, because first of all, it can be assigned to multiple queues, but for the purpose of this demo, I have only one queue right now. So what I would do is I would go to this queues tab, and I would put it on a queue which is called received EU invoices. And now I see that that is there. And as the next step, I would like to verify whether it's working or not. So I would just go to the main dashboard, and we already have the sample function, the sample document in the dashboard. So I would just open the document. It shows some initial hints, but I can see that there is this invoice number with its value, and imagine there was a dash in the text. So if I would write a dash into the the invoice number, then it gets sanitized. And so that's the first part which we've implemented. And the other one is if I have the line items captured, then if I would just write a value which is over 1 million, then I will be shown this warning message that the value is too big and that I should just be careful when I'm working with the data. So of course, like as a user, I wouldn't be inputting the values like this, but if the values would be automatically captured after the import process, then and the user would open the document, I would be shown this message, or the value would be sanitized right away in the case of the invoice ID. So that's basically all I've prepared for the demo, and I'll just continue quickly with the presentation because there's just a few slides which I wanted to talk about. So like we're always thinking in Rossum about what we could do with with the serverless functions and how to extend it. And right now we're thinking about few things which we could improve. So first of all, we could improve the testing of the functions. So as I showed when I was testing the document, we had some sample input, but in order to make the testing easier, we could show the input from, well, let's say the content of the documents which are in the review tab, in the to review tab, which are in the queue. So you could select one of those documents and you could run them through the testing environment in order to ensure that the function is working correctly. The second one could be that for all the extensions, we could be maintaining logs for the last n days. So right now, for example, if you're using the webhook extension, you can see the requests on your side, but you were probably interested in what's happening on the Rossum side, whether all the requests you're returning are being sent there correctly or they're being received. So that's something which we would implement for both webhooks and functions. So for those functions, you could see that every time the function was launched, you could debug it in Rossum. Then the next one would be that we would like to create more predefined functions like the one which I've already shown you, where you sanitize the invoice ID and shown a message to the user. But we will probably have more template functions. So continuously we'll add more things, and hopefully with those template codes, you will extend Rossum much faster. And the last one is that we're thinking about extending the runtimes, because JavaScript might be not the first programming choice of yours. So we are thinking of extending it by Python. We're not right now sure when that would happen, but we're prioritizing the features. So maybe new runtimes will come soon. And after having this whole presentation about what are the serverless functions, I also wanted to share this news, which I shared already in one of the product newsletters, and that is that we've made the webhooks objects more powerful. So if you're an existing customer and you were using the connectors for extending Rossum behavior, so that means you had your own HTTP server and you had a connector object which basically said that every time the Rossum the user updates a value or that when the document is being sent, it's sent to a URL which is defined in a connector. Then you can replace that with webhooks. And what would be the benefits is that first of all, you can have multiple webhooks on a queue. So you could define multiple endpoints where you could divide the code more smoothly, or yeah, that's basically it. And like the other thing is that you don't have to implement, if you don't want to, the safe endpoint. So if you just want to validate the data over a webhook, you can do that, but you don't have to use the safe endpoint. And because you're probably having some RPA workflow in there, so it just gives you more flexibility, and it's a little bit cleaner. And the last part is that when we were having the webhooks just for document status event, then and you were also implementing your own connector, then the authentication of the requests was different. And now if you just use webhooks for all of those events, it's unified. And so that was just a last piece of news which I wanted to share. If you didn't see it in the Developer Hub API documentation or some other material. And now I just wanted to have some question and answer session. If you're interested about some questions, if we won't find any questions, then I've prepared answers to some of the questions which you shared initially when you were signing up for the presentation. So if in case you have any questions, just post them in the in the channel. And hopefully everyone was hearing me properly. Awesome. So I see that there's a +1 for Python runtime. That's cool. And if you have any questions, just post them now. Okay, so I see one question. If we calculate some values, will this have a negative impact to the AI? So it won't have a negative impact on the AI. Where for training of the AI engine, we use the bounding boxes on the document, so this should be fine. But you're probably talking that even if you're changing a value of a field with bounding box, that should still be fine. I think like generally what you wanted to hear is that the OCR part isn't affected by this. And will there be an extra charge for setting up the internet connection? So no, there won't be an extra charge. Right now it's, just let us know that you would like to do this. Generally, the pricing of the Rossum functions is that right now everyone can try it in the trial. Then if you're already signed up for the I think it's called pro tier, then the functions should be available. And if not, then just contact the Rossum sales representatives or whoever is in contact with you, and they will include the Rossum serverless functions in your quote. Everything was clear, and thank you for joining. And if you'll have any ideas on how to improve anything in Rossum, just send us an email on the support@rossum.ai, or you can always use the question mark button in the app with report a problem, but you could always use it as report a feature idea or some of your requirements, because it's always helpful and we understand your needs more. So thank you very much. I think I had last slide on the presentation, and it was just, those were just links to the material. So yeah, here. If you want to read something more high level, then just go to our help center and read something there. If you're more interested about the API, then go to the API documentation. And on Developer Hub, we've prepared a code snippet where we try to describe all the functions which are used in the template code, and it's just described a little bit more. And we'll follow up there with some other examples of the serverless functions, and in future we'll transfer them to the app. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great evening or morning or wherever in the world you are right now.